Hello everyone and welcome back to the podcast. Last week I made a post on X saying that Palantir stock has 100x potential from current levels. The post reached over 600,000 impressions, as you can see on the screen now, and perplexed a good part of the financial community on X. Essentially, my view is that Palantir is in the same fundamental situation Nvidia was in back in approximately 2016. My Palantir investment is already up tenfold, and the consensus is that the company is tremendously overvalued, with most of the comments expressing disbelief as a result. However, my view is that most investors think quarter to quarter, and I am thinking in decades. Most investors believe that a stock will decline fast just because it's gone up fast. But unfortunately, that means that they are focusing on price action. And in order to succeed in the stock market, you need to focus on fundamentals. The remainder of this post is an in-depth breakdown of why I see 100x long-term potential for Palantir and why I think the fundamentals are pointing in that direction. The first question is, what is Palantir? Palantir sells digital twins to its customers. So it's basically just a digital copy of your company's operations. It's that simple. Digital twins turn everything that happens in a company in real life into data and allows that data to be easily plugged into AI models so they can learn to automate things. As AI gets smarter, this will be the only way to be competitive in the marketplace. And companies have so much data today that the only way they can do this is via a digital twin. You need an exhaustive real-time copy of your company's operations. Right now, my view is that Palantir's competition is years behind, and it looks like Palantir is positioned to take the whole market. Many ask, why can't Microsoft or other companies do this? Creating and operating a digital twin requires going through a lengthy process per industry. You can make a digital twin and have it do some cool things, but it won't be so fun when someone sees data they're not supposed to see, or when an LLM's understanding of your prompt is slightly off and your company loses $300 million in a blip, for example. Getting digital twins to really work is hard and requires decades of exclusive focus, especially when working with companies in highly sensitive industries like defense, finance, healthcare, and more. Microsoft, Google, and other companies of the sort have other primary businesses they need to look after. Since these are the highest status and impact activities within these companies, that's where the best talent tends to flow to. Many times, large companies fail to take on a smaller one because they simply lack the talent and focus as a result of this dynamic. A great example of this is Spotify, which has defeated both Amazon and Apple simultaneously. Music is an afterthought for Amazon and Apple employees, but it's the life mission of Spotify employees. My view is that Palantir has world-class talent density and that their culture is optimized for the task ahead. Thus, for Microsoft and others to take on Palantir, I believe this would require a drastic shift of their focus towards digital twins. This would largely imply abandoning their respective critical business goals, which would put financial viability in danger. Google would have to stop focusing on search and send their best engineers towards digital twins. Microsoft, in turn, would have to stop focusing on their productivity tools and so forth. This sort of pattern has been playing out forever in human history and is a powerful predictor of competitive outcomes in business, as best evidenced by my successful Spotify thesis. The most fascinating instance of this sort of dynamic I have come across is the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro led a small force of 168 Spaniards into the heart of the vast Inca Empire, which had a population of about 10 to 12 million people and an army of nearly 80,000 warriors. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Pizarro took advantage of internal strife caused by a civil war between Inca Emperor Atahualpa and his brother Huáscar. The Spaniards also possessed advanced weaponry such as guns, cannons, and horses, which the Incas had never encountered. Confident in his power, Atahualpa agreed to meet Pizarro at the town of Cajamarca, believing the Europeans posed little threat. Atahualpa arrived with thousands of unarmed attendants for what he thought was a peaceful meeting. During the encounter, a Spanish friar demanded that Atahualpa accept Christianity and submit to King Charles V of Spain. When Atahualpa rejected this and reportedly threw the Bible to the ground, Pizarro launched a surprise attack. The Spaniards slaughtered thousands of Incas in the ensuing chaos and captured Atahualpa. Pizarro held him hostage, demanding a massive ransom of gold and silver, which the Incas then delivered. Despite the payment, Atahualpa was executed in 1533, sealing the fate of the Inca Empire. Pizarro won because his smaller team was focused on war when the Incas were not. Bloc co-founder co-founder Jim McKelvey termed this dynamic as the quote-unquote innovation stack, which is when a small organization is extremely focused on a simple task. This translates into thousands of actions over time that amount to a moat. In my view, this is Palantir's moat. The company has been obsessed with digital twins for 20 years before anyone cared at all. And now it turns out that digital twins are the only way to deploy AI in organizations, and everyone has to catch up. Fundamentally, I expect this to play out a bit like the scene at Atahualpa going forward. The mental model behind my long-term view of Palantir's 100x long-term potential is the Nvidia algorithm, which I teach to students of my Tech Stock Goldmine course, which is linked in the show's footnotes. Nvidia's free cash flow per share levels are growing exponentially, as you can see in the graph below. Stock prices track free cash flow per share over the long term, and for now, Nvidia stock is up 90x from August 2016. Although there are questions about Nvidia's valuation at present, it's more interesting to understand the fundamental drivers of the rising free cash flow per share. The Nvidia algorithm is the blueprint that summarizes how Nvidia has achieved exponential free cash flow per share growth, and that, in my view, perfectly summarizes Palantir's fundamental situation at present too. And by algorithm, I refer to an operational pattern that serves to maximize shareholder returns over time. Nvidia's success is the result of cultivating GPU mastery for decades and then unlocking exponential growth by making it really easy to use their GPUs via CUDA, as you can see depicted on the screen now. After its launch in 2007, CUDA suddenly exploded the number of applications for Nvidia's GPUs. Previously, they were only used for gaming, and CUDA enabled anyone to use GPUs for all kinds of computational tasks. This exponentially increased Nvidia's TAM at a marginal cost and has led to higher margins over time. Now that AI is kicking off, this operational algorithm has created the perfect storm. To beat Nvidia at their GPU game, you have to go through the same multi-decade process that they've gone through to get as good at GPUs as them. With every additional GPU they put out into the world, the moat also gets stronger. This is because as CUDA becomes more widely used, buying a GPU that does not support this framework makes less sense over time. CUDA is therefore creating a network effect that makes it even harder for competitors to take share. This operational pattern can actually be generalized, as you can see in the graph below. It follows that when a company spends decades getting good at a technology that fundamentally enhances humanity's ability to process information and or harvest energy to then catalyze distribution via a sudden technological shift, exponential growth ensues. The overarching driver of this algorithm is the ever-rising demand for computation. Whatever we choose to call it, AI, data science, or something else, the demand for computation is rising exponentially. If you think deeply about it, you may also find that the previous generalization actually elegantly summarizes Palantir's fundamental situation. They have been mastering digital twins for decades. Recently, they launched AIP, their artificial intelligence platform, which makes it far easier to sell, deploy, and operate their digital twins, thus exploding the number of end applications and margins. Essentially, AIP is to Palantir what CUDA has been to Nvidia. It's turning Palantir's digital twins from cryptic and clunky pieces of software that only a few use to something that relatively anyone can use. With every increment in productization, Palantir gets even harder to replicate. You not only have to go through the lengthy process of getting digital twins right across industries, but you also have to productize simultaneously and sell fast to eat Palantir's lunch. Otherwise, you'll be stuck working on digital twins while they take the whole market, as has happened with Nvidia to date. And at the moment, Palantir has no real competition and productization is well on its way. A question that I get a lot is, do you have a quantitative model that shows how Palantir can go up 100x over the long term? And my answer is, do you have one that could have predicted the below increase in free cash flow per share? The answer is no, because the only way you could have forecasted this back in the 2021-2022 period is by understanding that Palantir had a unique offering and that its culture was world-class, and that therefore productization was likely, and that as a result margins would go up. If you go back to my Palantir deep dive, you will be able to see that that is exactly what I predicted. In early stages of the Nvidia algorithm, qualitative models are far more powerful predictors than any Excel session could ever be. If you happen to disagree, please leave me a comment explaining how could a quantitative/Excel model have predicted the onset of AIP. Perhaps I am missing something, and trust me, I am totally open open to that possibility. As you can see in the graph below, Palantir had only 321 commercial clients at the end of Q3 2024. The rapid growth evidences the accelerating rate of productization via AIP, but the truth is that Palantir hasn't even started to scale yet. 321 clients is probably not even 1% of what they can do, and so just by the size of the runway ahead, there's plenty of upside for Palantir. Additionally, much like CUDA, AIP will generate network effects that will enable Palantir to deliver 10 times more value to customers, to 10 times more customers at a tenth of the cost. This is the broad equation that leads to my 100x long-term potential view, although this doesn't mean that there won't be corrections along the way. However, as evidenced by my Amazon and Meta thesis, corrections are usually an opportunity if your qualitative model points to higher levels of free cash flow per share in the future. Both stocks dropped over 50% in 2022, driven essentially by the market's myopia. But as you can see in the graph below, after the dip in free cash flow per share levels in 2022, both companies have hit new all-time highs. Indeed, a simple qualitative analysis paired with some numbers revealed back then that both organizations were simply gearing up to achieve new financial records. What these two cases teach us is that there is no substitute to a deep qualitative understanding of companies, because if you simply look at the numbers with no context, you are likely to extrapolate with the market and effectively get cashed in. So when the numbers go down, you're likely to sell and miss on the opportunity that comes after that. At the moment, digital twins are monolithic. This means that they are simply real-time digital copies of the organization's operations that allows you to plug data into AI models as previously expressed. However, over the coming decade, I believe we are going to see digital twins interconnect. Once everyone in your supply chain has a digital twin, it only makes sense to connect them. The amount of value that can be delivered to customers at a marginal cost via the resulting network effects is unfathomable today, but essentially this leap could potentially take Palantir from powering companies to powering entire industries. By connecting digital twins, Palantir can go from enabling the automation of functions within organizations to doing so across organizations with some relatively minor code implementations. It's the same idea behind my Spotify thesis. By adding new verticals, they've managed to increase ARPU, average revenue per user, at a marginal cost. They've effectively leveraged their existing platform to deliver substantially more value without increasing costs. And with a bit of added focus on the cost structure, the result is spectacular growth in free cash flow per share levels, as you can see below. I believe that this dynamic will play out with Palantir too, because it's natural to connect digital twins, because companies have to interface with each other and not only operate internally. The upside along this path will likely continue to multiply over the long term as different layers of our civilization continue to adopt digital twins. In the coming decades, digital twins will come to guide every decision that involves optimizing the use of time and other scarce resources. In this manner, Palantir could potentially become a key component of our civilizational fabric by not only powering industries, but just generally governance across the board. The probability of Palantir capturing this opportunity is meaningful so long as the corporate culture remains sharp. You may have noticed that CEO Alex Karp makes frequent mention of Palantir's culture, and this is because he knows it broadly determines their fate. Here's a particularly insightful mention he made during the Q3 2024 earnings call, which shows how he doesn't think in quantitative terms either. He understands that Palantir's competitive edge comes from qualitative and subtle elements.
That the financials of Palantir would flow from our products and our culture and our way of implementing, that we would bring violence and death to our enemies while targeting and general issues of safety better for our allies and for Americans, that we would stand by our values in thick and thin, including that the West and America are superior ways of organizing and that this is a great country.
As you can see in the graph on the screen now, in Q1 2016, Nvidia's free cash flow per share was roughly 0.5. 4 years later, it came in at 0.18, and as of Q3 2024, it came in at 2.3. To summarize, the main drivers of this performance have been: 1, Nvidia having no real competition during this period of time; 2, an exponential increase in ease of deployment of their GPUs; and 3, an exponentially rising demand for computation. If my assessment of Palantir's competitive positioning is correct, I believe we will see Palantir's free cash flow per share levels rise similarly. Palantir's free cash flow per share in Q1 2021 came in at 0.6 0.076, which is roughly where Nvidia was at in Q1 2017. The two other conditions are being met at present, and I believe that the last one will be met over the long term, regardless of what AI turns out to be. We are simply going to have exponentially more compute demand every decade. If Palantir checks the aforementioned three boxes, I believe we are going to see a winner-takes-all kind of scenario emerge, with Palantir, as previously mentioned, adding 10 times more value to 10 times more customers and potentially hundreds, even potentially thousands of more customers at a tenth of the current cost. Again, this doesn't mean that there won't be corrections along the way or corrections that will make people want to vomit. This is a very, very hard game, and people don't really believe it until they see their favorite stocks decline over 70% for no reason that affects your long-term thesis at all. As I previously explained, exponential trends tend to defy common sense. They make little sense at the beginning when progress is scarcely visible, and even less sense down the line when progress is staggering and hard to believe. This is a relatively new phenomenon, and both Nvidia and Palantir stocks are instances of the market trying to put a price on an exponential trend. Humans are linear thinkers, so this can only be a bumpy ride going forward, assuming that I get this thesis right, which I could get it wrong. I have a portfolio with a number of picks, and all of the picks in my portfolio I believe have tremendous potential long term. So if just one of them works, then the portfolio will do very well, but I'm very confident on my Palantir thesis for now. So thank you very much for joining me. As always, if you enjoyed this, can I please ask you to share this with one friend? These deep dives are for free, and so the only way this grows is with your help. Thank you very much in advance. Take care, and until next time.